more and more sales companies have to produce, and because if they're
Hmm.
going to be running numbers and they have to be advising other producers where to go, where to get tax
Hmm.
credits, it's a normal evolution that you would want to be more hands-on versus just selling for
Yes.
commission, because as we all remember, and it's a tale as old as time, but when
Hmm.
you're doing great sales, it's because the movie is great, and when you don't do, it's because you suck as a sales agent and not because the movie did.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Heart of Show Business. I am your host, Alexia Melocchi. I believe in great storytelling and that every successful artist has a deep desire to express something from the heart to create a ripple effect in our society. Well, hello to the listeners of the Heart of Show Business podcast. New season, new year. And guess what? I am bringing in some amazing friends from a long, long time ago. And one of them is actually sitting right here in front of me in this pre Berlin film market, because by the time we drop this, it's going to be Berlin time. So you're going to want to listen so you can learn if you're going to Berlin. With me is my Aussie friend, Michael Favelle, who is the CEO of Odin's Eye Entertainment, which is a major player in the distribution, sales, production, financing, the whole works. Has been in the business for 25 plus years. I beat him by 5 years, so that makes me a senior, not by age, hopefully. And so I have him here because we're going to have an amazing discussion. Of course, Odin Zaida's animation is, and obviously production, and so many. We'll talk about all that. But um, I'm just so excited, and therefore, Michael, welcome to my show.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It's great to see
It,
you.
it's so great to have you here. And as I was saying before, off the record, but I literally put the Cannes Film Festival background for those of you that will see the YouTube version of it in your honor, the famous Croisette, because for some of you that don't know that, but Odin's Eyes always has the prime office spot during the Cannes Film Festival that literally faces the red carpet. So he's a fabulous host. He invites those he likes, hopefully, and not those he doesn't like, to his office during opening night and everything. And we all get to see the red carpet and what's happening and take pictures. And of course, we did that this year. Michael, when are we going to see those great photos that you're taking every year? You have yet to do a
Oh,
video.
God. No, I haven't done a video.
No?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about doing that. It shouldn't be too hard these days with all the bonus technology that exists to make one's life a little bit easier. Um, yeah, no, I'll definitely do that. It's such a great spot, and we're fortunate to have it. Hopefully, we'll be there again this year. It's one thing, like many, that I have to book. We've just been, focused on Berlin, getting ready for the European film market at the moment. So that's, for us, our preparation is, like everyone, it's obviously, just the basic logistics, just that kind of housekeeping of where we're going to stay, where is our booth going to be, what is our booth going to look like. But, also obviously the building of the slate and making sure that we've got something new to talk about with distributors to keep them coming back each time. So it's always, yeah, I'd like to say that there are quiet times in the business, but there's very few, very few, and certainly in the lead up to the month before a market is always, the busiest
Oh, yeah,
time for us.
absolutely. And you know what? One of the discussions that I'm having with so many of my sales agent friends and producer friends is that what filmmakers and creatives don't really understand is how expensive it is for all of us to go into those places. And so I I think it's important to discuss, because everybody's saying, I just need to go get a sales agent for my project. I just need to go there. And when they don't get the yes, say from your company or anybody else's company, they do not factor the amount of time and expenses and investment that it takes from Odin's Eye, whoever, to market a movie, especially in this time. So, how do you feel the
Hmm.
business has changed, both from attending markets? Are markets still useful? And also, in terms of the difficulty of, selling movies in general.
Hmm. Um, well, look, things have changed quite a bit over the last really the last decade, I suppose. They've changed dramatically. And the specific value of festivals has changed in certain ways as well. Um, I think probably the major change is that for producers, I personally don't think going to a lot of festivals is necessary. The last thing, like, just sales agents in the past used to take dedicated acquisitions people to markets to cover films, to meet with producers, and some certainly still do, but they definitely do not do it to the same extent that they previously have. Some, big sales agents, like uh, I don't want to name anyone, but some of the bigger ones have very explicit, no pitch meetings. Uh, they won't take anyone. They won't take any materials. You have to put it through if you don't know the person that you're supposed to, then you've got to put it through the general thing, um, like the general email or whatever. Nowadays, yeah, we used to take someone. These days, we don't. Typically, it's rare for us to take an acquisitions person, and typically we will have, what I guess everyone, either, you know, just slightly disparagingly would refer to as the door bitch in the olden days, the olden days, even the newer days. I think that it still kind of exists because that's kind of, it's that, firm, but thank you, leave you, like, for us, it's thanks for coming. We are here to focus on selling out the films that we have already acquired before the market. We're happy to receive your material and we will take it and we will look at it later. We might look at it during the market, just like flip through the materials, or have a quick look and see if it's something that justifies us dedicating time to that. Our job at the markets is to work for the producers who are actually paying for us to be there in the first place.
Mhm.
We are fronting the money to do it, so we are taking, the risk, or the sales agents are taking the risk of, spending that money, in the expectation that they will be able to recoup it from the sales that they do. So any time that they're, devoting to those other activities like acquiring films, are not is not really something that's recoupable. Um, so we and pretty much everyone else really prefers to look at the materials ahead of time, and have a pre-booked meeting if we're interested. Um, I think you know, very little has ever come from, you know, door knocking,
Mhm.
in my experience. Some markets have, better quality than others. I guess there's a cost to attending Cannes for a lot of, just say specifically for Americans, whereas the bar for AFM is perhaps a bit lower. So, um, you know, there can be, a different level of quality, and some of the most ridiculous projects we've ever seen have come out of AFM. They're hilarious, but uh, yeah,
Oh,
that's, I guess, it's a long answer to a small part of the question, I suppose. Um, you know, are the markets still relevant? Yeah, like, it's still worth going, because especially if you're, starting out, you need to build a network. It's the relationships that do take time to build, and it's certainly much better having met the people in person that you're going to entrust, if you're a producer, to entrust your film to. And the same goes for us as, sales agents and distributors. But we're certainly not going to the same amount of markets that we used to. We used to, 10 years ago, we would be going to, 9 or 10 markets or more, a dozen markets a year, and festivals and different things. These days, we tend to skip a lot and really just focus on the major ones, because the costs are exorbitant, and technology has obviously powered up through and from COVID, and people are now quite happy to take virtual meetings and kind of prefer it because it is more time. It's more time effective, frankly.
Exactly.
It's a lot more to the point. It's a lot more business oriented. It's certainly more difficult to make a relationship over Zoom, but I think if you're in tune and in the moment with the person that you're talking to, and not you know with other people, or have other things going on, then you can we sell over Zoom for certain markets. I mean, really selling these days is a 365, plus days a year thing. You don't necessarily, we from a sales agent's perspective, don't necessarily wait to launch a movie at a festival. We're quite happy to introduce it beforehand these days. The markets are really um, meet and greet markets now. In a lot of ways, there's not the same instant gratification that we used to get of closing a ton of sales very quickly. It still happens for certain types of films, in certain genres, for certain buyers and certain territories, but everything takes a lot longer. The big, if it's a acquisitions perspective, producers are trying to get, the A24s or whoever. So, before it maybe comes to me, we would have to wait for perhaps them to pass on it, unless obviously we have a relationship existing. Um, and the same with, distribution. Distributors have to, even the biggest independent distributors in a territory kind of have to wait for streamers and the global studios to decide whether they're going to buy a certain film or not. And all these delays, at each level, just things happen a lot slower
Yeah.
these days. They still happen, but just not in the same way that they used to, except for, sort of rare, there's always outliers who, will launch and sell, immediately. Um, but whenever the strategy of the seller is to go for a worldwide streamer or global studio first, and not the independent separate international territories, it does take a lot longer. We have to carry the films longer at festivals, which means, we're having to take it to you know, maybe two more festivals than we used to in the past to do the same amount of sales. But we'll meet and greet the distributors, we'll show them stuff. They'll then take it home, they'll watch it, they'll review it, they'll read it, they'll run their numbers, they'll come back with their offers. And typically we're closing for, deals, immediately after the market, and then for the next 3 months from
Yeah.
that particular launch.
I love what you said, and this is super interesting because from the the filmmakers and creators perspective, I love what you said, because what I think it happens is when people have to travel overseas, they are forced to get to know the global marketplace, not just the US marketplace, like Australia being a major player, obviously, in both production and distribution, and all this incredible opportunities to film there. And I think that because they're spending more money to go to those markets when it's outside of their home base, they're forced to have to learn about Otis I before they come in. They're not just going to be walking by and just going, hey, I have a project to pitch. And they're like, what is, like, they don't even know what you're doing. They have no idea who you
Hmm.
are, just kind of
Yeah.
seeing what sticks to the wall. And I remember, in fact, that you are notorious for posting on Facebook sometimes some of the most out there pitches that you hear from people that just walk on the room. And I honestly, you should have a collection of those and find them on your timeline and just even publish a little book about like what not to say, because this is the thing that people need to learn, that this is a global industry and it takes a lot of damn work even for
Hmm.
companies like yourself. You know, you're not going to go, oh, I just had the best idea in the world and I'm going to give it to Tom Cruise and you're going to be just throwing money at me. And they just clueless, clueless. And I love
Mm.
that they are finally they're doing educational platforms in the different. I know you're on South by Southwest Australia. Like you, there is the opportunities, like you said, now with Zoom, and that's the beauty of technology, is that we're able to learn more about one another. And like you said, it's so much better, people, if you wanted to talk to Michael or anybody in his team, is to set up a Zoom with his team. They're going to have a lot more time to talk to you, just like I am right now, than running at a market when they're trying to close a sale. They're trying to chase after a buyer who owes them money or not.
Mm.
And they're not going to have the
Mm.
bandwidth to listen to you,
Yeah,
right? It's
we are, you absolutely don't have it at market unless you have a dedicated person, and they're typically going to, if it's a company that has the resources to do that, they're probably doing it because they're also producing. And as you know, a lot of the bigger sales agents are, it's really the only way that the business has survived. If it wasn't for, sales agents becoming producers, you know, companies like XYZ have, built incredible businesses around, identifying talent and, uh, uh, basically packaging the projects with them and developing it with them. And, we do, the same kind of thing where we, when we've brought people to market, we've targeted the people that we know can deliver. Uh, Everyone is so risk averse. Projects really have to be bulletproof at so many different levels. And that's something that, yes, a lot of first timers or inexperienced producers will come into these markets and get the shock of their life when they find that doors are actually not open for them, and they can find it extremely frustrating. There's
exactly.
tons of resources out there, like this podcast, for example, where, people are talking about these things. Film festivals, local film festivals typically have, um, kind of panels and discussions with different people. A lot of it is now recorded and on easily available
Yep.
on the web of what to do and what not to do.
Yep.
Um, and it's not too hard. But yes, there's been some wild ones. The ones at AFM are typically have been historically they've been the most entertaining. Um,
Thanks to the
there
AFM,
was
but
one guy who came in as he came dressed as the lead character of the movie, which involved it was a movie about a famous music producer who had allegedly shot someone, um, and was on trial for this thing. And this certain person had this huge afro, so he came in with this huge afro, acting as the character, and wanted to do his pitch. Because it was so ridiculous, and it was probably the end of the day, and we needed a bit of levity. We, indulged the pitch, and ended up looking at the footage that was shot, and it was stuff that definitely would appear on. it would make Ed Wood look amazing. It would, I can't tell you. It would definitely be something that would appear on do you know the podcast? What is it? How did this get made?
Oh, yes. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yes. It would be a high rater on that one. It's up there with Birdemic in terms of, you know, awful things. Anyway, major digression, but I liked it. I'm discreet, but I'm also like, yeah, this is something that is ridiculous and yeah.
And it's educational. And it's educational. I think it's funny. You're reminding me of the time when I went to see The Mummy, the movie, and it was packed. And, it was the original Mummy, I think, with Brendan Fraser or something. And I remember that we're just watching one of those ridiculous moments with like cheesy lines. And all of a sudden you're hearing a voice that says, how did this get missed? Of course, it must have been a writer. It was probably like a professional writer who was like pulling his hair out, and everybody started laughing. So you're just reminding me of that. And you're also reminding me of, and I need to ask you that because I still
Hmm.
to this day hear that all the time. Maybe we can pre sell this movie. I know that
Yeah.
there's going to be pre sales on it so I can finance it. And I'd love for you
Hmm.
to give me your 2 cents on
Sure.
pre sale market.
Sure. God, the pre-sale market also has changed a lot. It's right now it's exceedingly difficult. The pay one window has collapsed. Really since sort of May or really no, probably March last year. Like uh, for those who don't might not know that, what that is basically that's the first window after theatrical. So it'd be like, the streaming. This might be the streaming window, for example. Um, that would be, a major part of revenue for whoever is distributing it. And kind of for the distributor, the ability to have that deal or a certainty of a certain price and a certain volume of those deals, for those distributors, that has fallen away in the US first, and then it kind of also started happening in other territories as well. And it all sort of happened very, very quickly. So that combined with the strike obviously made, just makes the distributors who are like, nah, we now have to halve the amount of movies that we're acquiring. And those streaming platforms and studios also decrease the price at the same time. So you've got downward pressure on advances from distributors, as well as downward, basically a demand issue. The demand has gone down.
Then the
So,
signal.
um, from a sales perspective, it means that only certain types of movies are going to really work as pre-sale, which means that they're either at the moment, quite expensive action packages that, companies like Highland or Sierra Affinity might put together, where, there's like like a leg, what I sort of consider like me legacy media stars, so like a Mel Gibson, a John Travolta, a Nick
Gerard Butler.
Cage. Yes, exactly. All those guys that are like, yep, okay, they are guaranteed and very clear action oriented stuff.
Yeah.
Anything that maybe lacks those kind of names or is sort of outside of that genre has become very difficult unless of course it's a director driven prestige picture that might be put together by A24 or Film Nation. For us smaller guys, it's really trying to find those pre-sale packages where it's like, okay, there's a clear audience, there's a clear market, there's a clear requirement for a distributor for a certain name. And they're the kind of movies that we're putting together. So that like we're trying to put, quite a few in the action space, which is something that we've not done a lot of in the past. it's still exceedingly difficult to lock in talent. Talent prices, as of today, what is it, January, mid-Jan, haven't come down yet. They're still asking the pandemic pricing and the streaming war pricing. So the new normal or new reality price of what cast are going to get on an independent movie is sort of yet to balance out. So, at the moment, I feel that a lot are unfortunately asking more than what the market can sustain and bear. And so, distributors and packages are not being able to be completed as a result. It's super frustrating. I don't think it's ever been as difficult to sort of package and put something together. I mean, if you've got, a shark movie with a B name in it, then yes, okay, that's something that the market can handle. Or if you've got like a horror genre picture that's maybe like in the elevated genre space, but super low budget, like 2 million or so with a B name in it, or someone that has some kind of meaning for that genre, then that is also something that can get up and get pre-sold. But
And
um,
animation as well, right? Because I know you do a lot of
mhm,
animation. And
yeah,
I think maybe animation also works because it has a shelf life and that is
hmm,
longer.
yeah,
And you're not necessarily so tied to names, because if you have cute little
hmm,
characters like the ones that I see, animal
hmm,
crackers and somebody with a cat, and I love cats, and you
hmm.
have one too.
Bad Cat on Tubi at the moment as a as a Tubi
See, I
original in the US.
watch that. This
Yeah.
gotta be like, but those work because those are concept driven, right? And they're very broad.
Typically they're very broad, they're very family. The ones at work tend to be sort of in the 12 year old plus kind of area where it also works for family. Um, and I've found it's been easier to, like, certainly during the pandemic time, obviously animation kept coming through. They, had some took them a little while to change up their structures for production, but they typically did continue, delivering movies, which was great for us because we, thank God, still had some revenue coming in, and that helped. That definitely helped our business. But yeah, they're family, they're broad, they're universally, obviously universal. They're easy to dub into different languages. So it's we still find animation is set right now. Animation is, even as a finished film, animation with no names is easier to sell than a finished film
Mm.
with a B name or something. Um, but at the same time, animation is also exceedingly difficult to finance at the moment, but for, different reasons. I mean, yes, the pay one window is also an issue, but the more difficult part is the bigger territory pre-sales. Like we used to have huge pre-sales to China. That's gone. We used to have big money to Korea. That's gone. Their market's pretty much decimated at the moment. It's still maybe only 30% of pre-pandemic levels. Um, France and Germany are difficult to pre-sell because their TV market has consolidated so much and is so heavily controlled by Disney and the studios in terms of output that there's very little room. So local distributors can't guarantee that again that they can get a pre-sale for that TV slot. So yeah, it's still difficult. It's doable, but the project has to be very precise. It has to, maximize the different tax incentives in different corners of the globe with different co-production structures. Budgets have had to come down. Um, yeah, so it's a very difficult space as well, but it's a personal passion of
Yeah.
mine. So, I wanted to be an
It
animator
makes
when I was a kid, so it's fun.
No, it's fun. And plus, you know what? It makes sense coming full circle with the conversation at the beginning of our podcast is that, more and more sales companies have to produce. And because if they're
Hmm.
going to be running numbers and they have to be advising other producers where to go, where to get tax
Hmm.
credits, it's a normal evolution that you would want to be more hands on versus just selling for
Yes.
commission, because as we all remember, and it's a tale as old as time, but when
Hmm.
you're doing great sales, it's because the movie is great, and when you don't do, it's because you suck as a sales agent and not because the movie did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly, and if the
no more
movie
abuse.
sells really well, it's the producer who's like, yes, it's the film that did it. It was all about the film, and
Exactly.
of course, it's always a bit of both. I mean, but sales agents can typically only do what the film allows us to do. Yes, of course, there's some variation between different sales agents, but it's a thing. You've always got to find the right sales agent for the right movie. My advice
Exactly.
to people is always like, look at their lineup. Do they have anything on their lineup that is similar to or the same as the movie that you're making? If not, don't waste their time, don't waste your time. Find someone else who is in that specific space. Don't try and go, oh, well, A24 have a huge brand and they can sell anything wherever they want. It's like, well, no, not necessarily. They're known for specific things. They have specific buyers that they work with and specific distributors that they work with for a particular type of movie. Um,
Exactly.
and yeah, but there's been a lot of evolution. I mean, a lot of like more the art house people that would be more director driven and more festival film driven in the past. They're all moving more into the commercial space. There's been a lot of companies moving into the animation space. Um, and so it's becoming more crowded in these areas, which is fine. Everyone's got to, keep going. But I think the used car salesmen, men of the past, have long left the business because it's just
Left the
not
building, have
that
left the
anymore.
building, Michael, for sure. So, last question is, what does Odin? Because I've always wanted to ask you too, by the way,
Hmm.
what does Odin's
Yeah.
eye stand for? I have
Oh,
always
right.
wanted to ask you that.
You mean like where the name come
Like, yeah,
from?
what does
Why
that
that
mean?
name?
Yeah,
Oh,
who's
sure.
Odin?
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, you gotta have a name, and and naming companies is really difficult. And in some ways I wish I had like a boring company name that was like just started with an A, and it was not nothing a bit strange. Odin now is known more because of the Marvel movies. When I started the
Yeah.
company, however, Odin was quite obscure in terms of mythologies and things like that. Everyone knew of like the Greek legends and things like that, or the things from Rome, but not so much about Nordic mythology, which I've particularly been interested in. And initially, we're going to call the company Odin, just Odin Entertainment or Odin Productions, something like that. But Tom Cruise apparently had a company that was called that. So we're like, all right, we want to stay away from upsetting Mr. Tom. And so we're like, okay, but Odin's eye. Okay, so Odin gave up one of his eyes for in return for wisdom and foresight. He was a shapeshifter, so he was constantly changing and evolving. He would give inspiration to worthy poets and writers. He was also the god of war, and could be extremely vengeful. But so we try to we don't like to think of ourselves in that way, but we will also but we will stand firm on what we believe, and we stick by people, and we'll fight the good fight. if it's required. Um, so yeah, that's kind of why Odin's Eye and how that came to be. I had
Actually,
one buyer say once that the reason he had previously not taken a meeting with me is because he thought my company name was stupid.
wow.
Yeah.
But it's so memorable. And I honestly don't think it's stupid. It's a conversation started. And now I know
Yeah.
what you represent, Michael, which is very in line. I have to say, you are what you declare yourself to be. And so, and
Oh,
I have
thank
to
you.
say,
That's
I
very
may have
kind.
to bring you back because this is, I mean, we could be talking for hours about the distribution business. And I'm sure there will be more to say 6 months down the road when there's going to be yet another change and we'll have to bring you back. So summing it up for the end, and you know that that's coming. I'm doing it the whole actor studio style. Uh,
Okay.
take a pick. Either
Hmm.
how do you, Michael, not the company, define yourself in 3 words, or the other window number two is any life mantra, business mantra that you want to share that has worked for you in your life that could
Hmm.
inspire someone else when they hear that.
Look, this business is really tough for everyone, and life is tough. You know, there's something that I've always sort of followed, and I recently heard that it's sort of a phrase that Tom Hanks used as well, in difficult parts of his life, which was "This too shall pass." Um, and you know, that's on the how do you survive in this business? That's kind of the philosophy that I've had to take is this too shall pass, and that can, you know, if there's a problem and something that's stressing me out, is there something that if there's something I can't do about it, well, okay, fine. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not gonna stress about it. If there is something I can do about it, well, that's great. There are things that can be done, and I can take those steps. So I kind of try to think in those ways to, kind of separate myself from the problem or the equation, and try to be Vulcan about it.
Mm.
Being, a bit of a, sci-fi
Yeah.
nerd. Um, yeah, so it would be those kind of two things.
I
Um,
love that because you're sort of giving a double meaning to this too shall pass. It's you can either surrender and this too shall pass, or you can take action and whatever the result is, this too shall pass. So I think
mm.
that's a perfect ending to this wonderful podcast interview, Michael. It's been such a joy to have you here. We've been trying for a while now. I am going to bring you back. You can mark my words on it because I'm sure there's going to be so many questions about what we just talked about. So thank you for coming on my show. And then, of course, anybody who's listened to it, if we're going to be posting the website of Odin's Eye. Please don't go knock on the door during Cannes or Berlin unless you have a meeting and they said yes. But you can always write to Michael's wonderful team that you can also find on the website. And then you can also contact me and, I might be able to like twist his arm a little bit. But if you like this episode, please subscribe, share, review. I make $0 on it, but I do love to give back to our community. Michael knows that, and he's one of those people as well. So have a beautiful evening, day, wherever you are in the world. This is the Heart of Show Business, and over and out.